Hi, I'm Ed Orser. I've been a member of Salem for 40 years. That might make me seem like an old-timer, but when my wife and I first came, we were really struck that there were many families in this church who went back for generations, because Salem got its start in the mid-19th century. It had a strong origin as a rural congregation of German speakers. But I always felt that throughout Salem's history, and it certainly was my experience, that it always was very welcoming to newcomers. It wasn't a closed congregation. It wasn't sort of a group of people hanging on to the past. It always seemed to be a group that was willing to embrace new folks and to move toward the future. As a person who's looked at Salem's history, I was always intrigued that in 1903 they built the building here on Newburgh, which meant they were moving downtown. They had been a little rural parish, a little rural stone church, lovely church, but kind of a farm church. German speaking. The new action was along Frederick Road, Catonsville's Main Street, and they built a really solid edifice here, but they were taking their turf to downtown Catonsville. And at the same time, they were switching their language of service from German to English, so they were really embracing newness and change. And when we came here in 1970, that was very much a moment of change nationally. A lot of change happening in the nation, but also in churches. And there were some churches that were kind of digging in and not really open to new things. If they had an old hymn book, they were sticking to the old hymn book. If they had an old liturgy, they were sticking to the old liturgy. And it's my feeling that Salem really was open to change. And so I think there's always, at least in my experience, been a nice way in which newcomers have been embraced, in which the church has been open to change. The church council, when we came, already had women serving. Not long after that, the first woman was president of the council. So in lots of ways, it was open to newness, and I think that's always been a really mark of Salem's history. Salem's kind of an interesting church to think about because it's based here in the middle of Catonsville. It had its origins as a village church and then a town church, but Salem also, certainly in recent decades, is very much a church that draws upon the whole nearby metro area. I mean, we have people like the Kohlensteins who come from Howard County. We have people who come from downtown, from Otterbein, like Tina and Ann. I mean, we really draw upon a really wide area. And I think there's something very special. We're not a really large church. We're a church that's small enough that people can get to know one another, but at the same time we're large enough that we do some really effective things. We have a wonderful music program. We have terrific Sunday school as it's been reinvigorated over time. I think there's always been a real strong outreach to the community, and that I think has been a real mark of this congregation. Right now we're reaching out even farther to help establish a mission church in Canton. In Salem's earlier history, it helped to locate a new church in Ellicott City, which today is bigger than Salem. So there's always been, I think, kind of an important sense of mission. Well, I think Salem has been really blessed with a number of pastors who have not only, in many cases, been here for considerable time, but have really had a warm and embracing effect on the congregation and the community. I can speak to the people that I've known. Paul Loddick was the pastor when we came. He came knocking on our door. We had been Lutherans for a brief period in a church in Ohio, came to Catonsville not with small children, not quite ready to affiliate with a church, and Paul came and sought us out. And one of the things that happened in that period was that the congregation established a series of small groups that met in people's homes, which was a wonderful way of getting to know people. So right away we felt very much at home with this congregation, and we really responded well to Paul. But Paul was here during a period of a lot of national conflict, a lot of issues around the war in Vietnam, around civil rights, change in the church, and so not everyone certainly responded so well to Paul's leadership, but I felt he really helped us through a difficult period. And then Ed Whetstone came, and Ed is such an outgoing person, so warm and embracing, and his ministry has been very important. Now followed by Dave and Tim. I think they really do a wonderful job of following in those traditions. I think that makes a tremendous difference. Certainly congregation shouldn't just be determined by the pastor, but the pastor sets a tone. I think it's really important. When we came, our children were very small, and Salem had a very nice Sunday school program, and it was wonderful to watch our children grow up in Salem. It was very affirming. But one of the things I think that's really important, again, thinking about Salem's adaptation to change over time, the sanctuary was built in 1903. The Sunday school building was built in the 1950s. The two didn't really knit together. So when our children were growing up in this church, the Sunday school rooms were sort of what we call the catacombs. They were downstairs in some rooms that really had not been modernized and were very sort of dingy and dark. When you wanted to go from one room to another, you had to go through the room. And so it wasn't the best of circumstances. It was fine for our kids. But certainly Salem began to realize that we really needed to update our facilities. And so when we took on the job of a renewed building plan, that was a major deal, because one of the things it did was to take the center piece of the building, the entrance, which had been a little back door, frankly, and to open it up and to provide linkage from the outside immediately into both sides of the structure. You could then access the building at all three levels. And very importantly, back to the Sunday school idea, we now have a bright and modern facility, set of rooms that really function very well. I think that's meant a lot. I think there are times when we sort of forget that when people are going to modern schools, when they're going to workplaces that are modern, they expect that too. It's not that we have an edifice complex. It's not that we're simply putting all our money in buildings and grounds. But at the same time, I think there are moments when a congregation has to really realize that we have to keep up with the times. Right now, we're sitting in the sanctuary, which recently has been painted. That wasn't an easy decision, what those colors should be. But I think, again, it's a testament to kind of the responsibility the church has had to be a place that's warm and welcoming.